What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Kyle coming back at you to talk about what happened was in week 14 of fantasy football. There's a laundry list of issues for us here, Kyle. First off, we had Bye-Mageddon with 6 teams on bye. That was not ideal. Then we had a bunch of underperforming stud running backs. Not ideal. And then when you add on top of that, all of the injuries that we just saw this past weekend, there's a lot of people scoring not a lot of points this week in fantasy football.
I mean, it was off to a weird start. It was anyway. I mean, Kenneth Walker isn't going to play. Who's going to get touches for Seattle? And then all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley has a neck injury. Is he actually going to play or not? I mean, there just was so many little things like that. And we already were missing a ton of players this week. It was a weird week, but we've said that every week now for 14 straight weeks.
14 straight weeks of it. I mean, look, when you look at the injury list, though, we got Tyler Huntley left the game for Baltimore. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Russell Wilson got knocked around pretty good there. Dameon Pierce left the game with an ankle injury. Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't play after halftime. Mike White left the game. Yeah, Mike White left the game multiple times and continued to walk on the field with his nuts in a wheelbarrow because the guy just did not want to come out of the game. We had Corey Davis, Kenny Pickett, Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore. Do I need to continue? There was a lot of people that got hurt this past week, Kyle. And it can
I ask you a quick question though?
Maybe. Do I know the answer to it?
You mentioned Mike White had to toss his nuts in a wheelbarrow. Whose nuts are bigger, Mike White for continuing to go back out there, or Ben Johnson calling a third down pass to Penny Sewell with the game on the line?
I'm not one to sit on the internet and comment about nut sizes, Kyle. They both give you permission. They were both on full display this past week. I'll go ahead and say that for sure. Let's start it off here though with a few of the other underperforming studs. What about Stephon Diggs? 5 targets, 3 catches, 37 yards. That didn't help your fantasy chances. Dalvin Cook, another down week for Dalvin Cook. 15 carries, Kyle, for 23 yards. I don't even know how that's possible. Also added in a touchdown, so he didn't completely kill you, but had a fumble and then only 1 catch for 13 yards. You mentioned Saquon Barkley earlier in his late week neck issue. That led to 9 carries for 28 yards, 2 catches for 20. Nick Chubb will continue to struggle now with Deshaun Watson. And this is something I want to talk about here real quick, Kyle, because I remember, and I know you do as well, we had so many people in the offseason, whether it was on social media, in the comment section here, I don't want any part of Nick Chubb because Deshaun Watson isn't under center. I don't trust Jacoby Brissett. It was an absolute flipped script because Nick Chubb with Jacoby Brissett is way better than Nick Chubb with Deshaun Watson. Mark Andrews, another struggle week, only 2 catches for 17. Travis Etienne had good volume, 17 carries, only 32 yards to show for it, and no pass catching work. How about Tua? The worst game we've seen all year from Tua. He completed 10 of 28, Kyle. How do you have an offense like that and complete 10 damn passes for 10 out of 28 passes? 145 yards, touchdown, also added 28 rushing yards. Part of the reason Jalen Waddle not 100%, only 2 catches for 31, but there were some big name guys that really dudded this week.
Yeah, it's unfortunate about Tua because I feel like he was absolutely rolling and then he has a bad week last week. And I feel like he just put so much pressure on himself this week to really bounce back, to prove the naysayers wrong, to those that were saying, here's Tua, this is what we thought he would be. I just feel like he's got to take a breath, step back. I feel like Mike McDaniel is going to get him in a position this coming week to succeed again. I think that whole offense will bounce back.
100%. They are way too good to not bounce back for sure. All right, let's head in to a few of our misses. Kyle, remember, we're talking about our biggest hits, our biggest misses of the week. We're not talking about every single player because we talk about over 100 players a week. I'll start off with my misses. Right off the bat at the quarterback position, Derek Carr. I don't really know what Derek Carr was thinking, but I was thinking for a lot more than 11 for 20 for 137 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Wasn't exactly expecting like huge numbers, but definitely more than that with the way he's been playing here as of late. What about Russell Wilson? I contemplated, do I got to take a miss on Russell Wilson? Though nobody out there wanted to start him. I had him listed as a sit, and he ended up being the quarterback 3 on the week.
Dude, he finally showed up. Holy crap.
23 of 36 for 247, 3 touchdowns, an interception, 57 rushing yards, and by far the best game of his season before getting injured there with a nasty concussion. And then Brock Purdy. I missed on Brock Purdy, but that is okay because I wanted to see this kid do it again. And
I mean, he had a pretty good week. I couldn't help it.
I knew there was going to be that's okay. I had one of my videos.
It was coming.
I had one of my video last week too, and it was stupid as soon as I said it, and I still left it in the video. But he went 16 of 21, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, added a rushing touchdown. He is somebody who's a little bit banged up right now, I believe, with an oblique issue, so that's something we're paying attention to as well. But Brock Purdy went out there, did not care that he was across the field from Tom Brady, went out there and just continued to ball. And I love watching football when it comes to stories like this. Mr. Irrelevant is actually relevant in San Francisco. I just hope he's healthy because I want to see if this kid can help make a run here late in the season. Next up, let me go to my running backs real quick, and I'm going to start off with your Lions because honestly, you were so pumped that the Lions won, and I know you're a Lions fan, and you're out there rooting, and on the inside, I am dying, Kyle, because I am responsible for running backs. And Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift did a whole lot of nothing and were outscored by Justin Jackson. That's a WTF moment right there for me. They had 25 touches between them. So it's not like they weren't getting volume. 25 touches between the two guys, not bad. Only combined for 76 total yards in those 25 touches. That is not going to cut it for arguably, okay, I can't say one of the best backfields because Swift really hasn't been consistent, but talent-wise, it's the best of both worlds. You have the between the tackle, bruiser and Jamal Williams, the guy on the goal line, the big play guy with DeAndre Swift. They let a bunch of people down because I can almost guarantee Justin Jackson was probably like 0% started this past weekend.
One thing I want to make a comment though.
Okay, here you go. Stick up for your Lions.
About the Lions offense here. One of the reasons why we didn't really see the upside from Jamal Williams this week is because they were never really in the red zone. All their touchdowns really came from outside that big play to Jameson Williams, big play to DJ Chark. Justin Jackson's run was like 12, 15 yards or something like that. So, it was one of those situations where, and Josh Reynolds was probably the closest one that was in the red zone, but they were striking from deep this past week.
They were going way deep, Kyle. Donta Foreman was a disappointment to a lot of people. The volume was still there, and that's why we wanted to continue to start him going up against Seattle. He had 21 carries, but only 74 yards, no touchdowns because they went the way of Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear. They're the ones that got the touchdowns. Donta Foreman was the odd man out. The backfield of Tampa Bay, Leonard Fournette and Rachaad White. Now, I said in the video last week that both of these guys should be relevant enough as like a flex play. They weren't crazy high in the rankings. They barely made the top 30, but they had 28 total touches. So it's exactly what I thought was going to happen, but none of them scored touchdowns. Rachaad White had a costly fumble, but both of these guys were mentioned last week as being options because Tommy's going to have to check down quick with the pass rush not being able to be held back by this offensive line. Both of these guys were top 2 on the team in receptions. So that came true. They just didn't do a whole lot with it. They were a disappointment. And then the last guy I'll talk about here is not even a miss technically because I didn't even mention him in last week's video because he wasn't even for sure playing when the video came out. But I'm going to talk about J.K. Dobbins because now he had 15 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. But I'm concerned still, Kyle. Like I live tweeted during the game when he had that big run. I said, dude isn't running right. Like something just doesn't look right. And then I'm sure Taylor, throw this picture up real quick of the knee of J.K. Dobbins. The doc sent us this in our team chat. Look at the knee of J.K. Dobbins. How does this look normal? You can tell the full range of motion isn't there in his knee. There's a hitch in his giddy up, Kyle. And I'm just worried that this is something that could pop back up in another week or two, and a lot of people going to get excited, and it could totally backfire on us here in the fantasy playoffs coming up.
Now, before we talk about some wide receivers and tight ends I missed on, in case everyone was wondering, who dis new camera looking really sleek. I just want to say that the new camera, I think, really fills in the beard well. I feel like the beard game is like an A+ today. So if you agree, make sure you leave a comment below on out of 10 how good my beard looks. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Jake can't grow a beard. He just grows a goatee.
I can grow a beard in 4 seconds if I wanted to.
He can grow it on his face.
I literally have to shave like twice a day. Not true.
Juju Smith-Schuster, he ended up being a sit for me this week. One of the reasons why he was a sit is just because we see the Kansas City offense continue to spread around the ball so much. Now, earlier in the week, when I talked about Juju, Kadarius Toney was also back at practice. Now, he didn't end up being cleared, so that ended up taking that hurdle out of it from us. But I was really worried about that, and I think that is something that we need to monitor going forward, that if and when Kadarius Toney comes back, does that hurt Juju and what he has been doing and how much they spread the ball around? And then Jerick McKinnon kind of coming out of nowhere.
Dude, I mean, is it like 2018 again? Like, what the hell is going on with that one?
Donovan Peoples-Jones, as we talked about earlier in the week, like, we have been worried about Deshaun Watson in this offense and whether or not he's going to start to kind of get back on the horse that he had at one point in time and look like a top guy again. And
he did look better.
He looked better. He looked improved. He looked better. At times, he did look like that guy that he used to be. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I mean, he ended up coming through, had over 100 receiving yards, had the most targets on the team as well. So that's going to be something to monitor. But I mean, he was a guy that we were kind of talking about like weeks ago as well, because Jacoby Brissett like made him a guy where, ceiling wasn't super high, but he was scoring like 8 to 11 points every single week, it seemed like. Devontae Smith, I knew it was kind of a mistake after I did it, but I sat Devontae Smith because, one, I was worried about a lot of rushing yards from the Philadelphia Eagles against the New York Giants.
They did.
And that ended up happening, but they still got the touchdown to Devontae Smith in the process. But part of it, too, is just that defense. It's banged up. When are guys going to be back? How healthy are they really actually on the field? Knew A.J. Brown would take advantage as usual. Devontae Smith ended up being a sit for me. He scored a touchdown, ended up being a start. Was still inside the top 36 wide receivers, though. So if you were watching that video and you took a chance on him, hopefully that still ended up working out for you. Richie James scores a touchdown. I mean, they had a tough matchup against Philadelphia. He ends up scoring a touchdown, which caught me off guard. Wasn't starting him last week. Christian Kirk was a start. He didn't end up doing anything. Zay Jones with another big game, and then Evan Ingram with an even bigger game, and we'll talk about those guys here in a second. And then at the tight end position, Dawson Knox scores a touchdown. The first time it feels like he's done that in quite some time. And then George Kittle, it started off good for Kittle. Like at the first half, it looked like, because I was watching the game, it was like, all right, Purdy's looking towards Kittle. This is good. Debo goes down with the injury, and I'm like, all right, Kittle's going to be a guy that might even see some increased targets at this point. And then they just blew them out and just started replacing guys in the second half. So Kittle didn't even play a full game. A lot of the starters didn't. So if he plays a full game, he might end up getting there. I think he can only end up having like 4 or 5 points. So he would have needed a few more catches. But we'll see what happens in the coming weeks with no more Debo and what happens with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and CMC.
You want to know what's crazy, Kyle?
Let's hear it.
George Kittle was only 1 reception away from finishing inside the top 12 still.
So,
and that's saying that he only had 4.8 fantasy points, because the tight end 12 on the week had 5.3, only a half a point more than George. That is the
position
sad.
Is an absolute disaster right now.
There was only 10 players that scored 6 or more points at the position. 6 or more. We're not talking about 10 or more. We're talking about 6 or more. It was bad for sure. All right, but now let's talk about a few of the really good hits, because there's quite a few here this week. First one, Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence has been somebody that's going to be inside my top 10 or 12. He has been for weeks. Was I expecting the number 1 overall quarterback performance? Not exactly. 30 of 42 for 368, 3 touchdowns, also had a rushing touchdown. He was inside my top 12 last week. Jared Goff was as well. He went 27 of 29 for 330, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. All of a sudden, we talked about this Detroit offense looking like what they were when they started the season. Once again, they're ending really strong. I'm going to take a hit on Mike White. Even though he missed multiple times and came out, he still played over 90% of the snaps and played in more snaps this week than he did in the game 2 weeks ago when he was fully healthy. He went 27 of 44 for 268, no touchdowns, no interceptions. A lot of people wanted to buy the hype of Mike White, but it wasn't the time to do it against Buffalo. His teammate, though, Zonovan Bam Knight, had him listed as a start. He went 17 for 71 and a touchdown, added in 2 receptions that really didn't go much of anywhere, but he continues to be a guy that you can probably use as a weekly flex play if you're dealing with some injuries. James Cook. A lot of people told me last week that, man, you're just behind the 8 ball, Jake, because James Cook has taken over this backfield. This is James Cook's backfield. I don't care who he's playing. We got to start James Cook going forward. 4 carries for 6 yards. No, I wasn't buying it. He was listed as a sit, so he's going to be a hit. Dameon Pierce.
Can I interject real quick on James
maybe
Cook?
Maybe.
Just we also warned him in the waiver wire video, because I listed him as an addition, but I told everybody that almost all of his production came in the fourth quarter when the game was out of reach. A lot of garbage time production last week, and people got super excited about it. This is why we don't look at box scores.
Yes, exactly. And that's why he was listed as a sit as well. Dameon Pierce. Difficult matchup for Dameon Pierce this past week. Had a costly fumble late in the game. Still scored over 11 fantasy points. Definitely good to see him back in double digits for sure. Zeke and Pollard. Kyle, every single week, I've been putting this duo higher and higher and higher, thinking that, you know what, I can't go much higher than I already am. This past week, I believe I had them both inside my top 13.
Yep.
They both finished inside the top 10 again. So just another one of those backfields that you got to, if you got either one of these guys, you got to start them each and every week. Najee Harris starting to bounce back a little bit. Didn't have a whole lot of production, but did find the end zone with a total of what we had, 50 total yards and a touchdown. So not huge numbers, but still, at least you could use them during Biomageddon. The Seattle backfield. This may be the question that I probably got the most last week is, hey, what are we doing in Seattle? It's a good matchup. I want to start somebody, and I didn't want to start anyone unless Kenneth Walker would have been 100%. He wasn't. DJ Dallas, not 100%. He ended up not playing. So then it turned into, hey, what am I doing? Tony Jones Jr. or Travis Homer? Neither. I really don't want to do either. I said if I had to pick
show questions on those guys, and the only time I was picking one of them was if it was like, oh, the only other guy you got is off waivers, then maybe try it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple questions. Say, who do I start over either one of those? I said if I had to pick one, it would be Travis Homer. And then Adam Schefter comes out and tweets that Tony Jones Jr. is going to be the starter, and people all of a sudden they think that he's going to be the guy. No, we still had more touches going the way of Travis Homer. He still outproduced Tony Jones Jr., but he didn't do a whole lot of anything. So we listed them all as sits. Nothing happened. They didn't do anything. A combined total 36 yards in that backfield this past week. So having all of them as a sit was a good thing here in week 14.
Adam Thielen for the wide receivers.
Got that love in Thielen.
I said, might not have a ton of volume, but I bet he scores a touchdown.
And you know what he did?
Everybody was handing out touchdowns in that game, except for the guy who had over 200 receiving yards, and Justin Jefferson. He didn't score a touchdown. But he still, I mean, he was obviously still a start. DJ Chark, DJ Chark and Zay Jones were probably the biggest calls for me for the week. I mean, in the live shows, I had him at both his starts in the start and sit video. And then in the live show, it was DJ Chark, Zay Jones, DJ Chark, Zay Jones, I mean, over and over and over. So hopefully y'all started both of these guys because they had really good days. Chark scored, Zay Jones scored, Jerry Jeudy scored 3 times, and Jerry Jeudy was a start for me. I even mentioned it several times that if Cortland Sutton were to be out, we would have to throw Jerry Jeudy in that matchup against Kansas City. He had a huge day. Mike Williams, a lot of people were worried about Mike Williams and whether or not they should play him. And I said, hey, if he's out there on the field in this matchup against Miami, we are absolutely going to still start Mike Williams. He scores a touchdown. He looked healthy and good. And then for the tight end position, Evan Ingram ended up having a huge day. He was lower in my rankings, I will admit.
Yes.
Still had him as a start. Had him a little bit lower in the rankings than I would have liked, but it's just because of his inconsistencies, which I believe 1 week ago today when we did this video, Jake, we talked about that and how he's done that to me a few times this season. But
I don't know if too many people were expecting 15 targets, 11 receptions, 162 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, so if you started Evan Ingram and you didn't win your week, then I am sorry. You have some bad luck.
Yeah.
And then David Njoku, he scores a touchdown. He was really outside of Donovan Peoples-Jones, the reliable one on that team this week. Hopefully that continues with Deshaun Watson. Had him as a start as well. And then Dalton Schultz didn't score a touchdown, but had more than enough yards to get you over that hump. And then again, when only 10 of them scored like 6 or more points, those are hits.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, David Njoku is probably going to be the only guy I feel like overly comfortable with each week as of right now in this Cleveland offense. I mean, it's bad. I mean, as much as we've warned people about, hey, until Deshaun Watson really figures it out, we're worried about Nick Chubb. I know it's hard to sit Nick Chubb, but right now, David Njoku seems like the safest option in this offense for the foreseeable future. He's going to get looks. How many targets did Njoku had? He had 9 targets, 7 receptions. 9. Yeah, 9 targets for David Njoku. If we can get tight ends with 9 targets a week, they are 100% automatic starts. But that's kind of week 4.
People target my tight end.
All right. Anyway, that's kind of the recap of what just happened in week 14. Going forward, fantasy playoffs are here. No more bye weeks are here. Saturday night football games are now here. That is going to be a thing, which means more than likely our live show will be shifting to Friday night at some point, Kyle, because we didn't like to ruin our weekend night. We're going to ruin our Friday night, and just having to work, Kyle. But you know what? If we're going to do it, we're going to do it the right way. Friday night with Headliner Nation. Looking forward to doing that. Last week's live streams, Kyle, were on another level. If you missed last week's live streams, you missed something special. And we're not just talking fantasy football, but hey, we're going to get out of here for the day. We got a lot of content, a lot of teams to start researching for week 15. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week this week, and we'll talk to you later.